So how's everybody doing here? You guys doing good? Okay. Now, can I get a show of hands of who's like an art major in here? Okay. So it's pretty populated. Great, fantastic. This is exciting. You know, you guys, I am a consumer of media, a lover of art, and every time I'm in your position for a lecture or a presentation, I always ask myself, who is this person and why should I care about what they're about to say, right? Because it's a realistic aspect. Time is valuable, and you could be anywhere on the earth, but you're here with us right now, and we appreciate that. So we're here for a good time and not a long time, and hopefully we can learn some things, get some laughs, and you can see yourself in this path that I've taken that's extremely unconventional. So without further ado, we are going to start from Aerosol to academia, my perspective and practice, right? So Chris went over really quick, who is James Drills, that handsome guy, you know, flat top, right? I've been a resident artist at Broadway Studios and, you know, all that good stuff he said, so we'll skip through that, right? So primarily, you guys, I'm known for still life paintings. I do operate in a variety of different subject matter, but the thing that comes to people's mind when you say James Drills is a still life painting. So I really do enjoy putting objects in a shadow box, setting up my lighting, making a nice cup of coffee, you know, and painting through the night. This was a KitchenAid mixer, something that really brought back memories of growing up with my grandmother. She had one in her kitchen, and I had access to one, so I figured, you know, why not borrow it? And she's a really cheap model, never late, and we had a great time. So I think the crux behind these paintings, you guys, this particular still life painting was an exercise in how to paint glass, because I don't have a formal art education. I've kind of lily pad from one island to the next via books, YouTube, and things like that. And we'll kind of cover that in a few slides. But the experimentation aspect of being an artist is something that I would encourage you to all embrace. And coming to art classes, there's a lot of talk of process and materials, and we wonder, okay, well, how are they going to help me facilitate my dreams, my desires, my pain, my suffering, my accomplishments? And I think when we look into ourselves and we're honest with ourselves and our experiences, sometimes we can transfer those experiences into narratives. And still life painting can be narrative, contrary to popular belief. Table for One was a fun experiment in just using raw umber, French ultramarine, and a little bit of white, and I wanted to see if I could create an old-timey photo, but, you know, just with a few objects that are around my studio, because as still life painters, we collect junk. So I would encourage you guys to lean into that, and a lot of kitchen appliances you'll see turn up in my work. And I feel like sometimes as humans, people, we look at ourselves and we feel like we have like this designated task, you know, and this is who I am. And people categorize themselves by aesthetics and by archetypes and things like that. And that's sort of in vein of the appliances, you know, a rice cooker is functional for just that. But the duality of these paintings is when I create things like this, a lot of times there's a connection to past experiences. So this rice cooker is in direct reference to my time in Seattle. I had a lot of Filipino friends, and Ate Vicky, one of the matriarchs, would always have a rice cooker and adobo chicken or pancit, and she would say, hey, you know, make something to eat. So this painting was kind of a homage to maternal figures that are away from our mothers. And I feel like it's really sort of difficult for me to bounce these ideas off of a wall where I have to be completely honest with myself. So like this particular painting, this painting is called An Artist's Resolve, and this was a cup that I got in a thrift shop in Oakhurst, shout out, right? And it's Sierra Gaming, like an old video game company, and we'll get to my love for those in a second. But I broke up in a relationship, and 2 days later, I broke my favorite cup. And I said, hold on, this is a sign. Like, hold on, let's paint this, because we have this relationship, this cup and I. Like, you know, it comforts me through painting, through reading articles, through all of my, you know, mundane activities. And now our relationship is forever changed after it broke, you know, and it's still in my life in some sort of capacity, but our relationship was never the same. So I felt like it was important to kind of capture that time in my life and knock out two birds with one stone. So the thing that, you know, I really have kind of made my focus in art is like versatility and not being a one-trick pony. So I think having a artistic practice that allows us to do just that, practice, right? And spend 3 to 5 hours on a painting and see what sort of results we can get. And if the thing works, then we have a good one. And then if it doesn't, it just goes in a milk crate, never to be seen again. And what's interesting is when I look at all of these paintings, each one tells a story. And it's really a collection of memories. And most of these have different homes all around the country. But I keep this picture just to remind me, you know, of the trials and tribulations. And I think when we all look at ourselves and our lives, we can see the high points and the low points. And when you make artwork out of these experiences, you'll find that you don't own that interpretation. So as you share it with the general public, their life experience coincides with that imagery, and then the interpretation goes totally left, and that's okay. And that's kind of what we want as artists. So that's why I, you know, try to give loose titles to my paintings and leave an air of mystery, because that's where the fun's at, is letting the viewer engage with the work, right? So here's another still life painting. Now this one was for a group show at Jeffrey Scott Agency. We were celebrating the 18th anniversary of Broadway Studios. So now my goal in this, because I thought I was like smarter than I really am, and I was like, oh, if I use like primary colors, that would be cool, you know, like cyan, magenta, and yellow. So you got the red tube of paint, a yellow lighter, and a blue box car, which is just a small prop, a vintage spray can, and hiding in the back is some India ink just for the flair. But I think as artists, when we have these moments where we're amusing ourselves and we engage with our paintings, the public seems to really find those paintings really engaging, inspiring, and insightful. So this is a painting of the Poverillo Yard, which is a train yard in Fresno. And it was just, I went out one day with my camera and took pictures, and there was like this little bum encampment and just train cars right next to it. And I'm talking like, you know, 4 feet of walking space, really small. And it was poetic in its dingy, grimy, Skid Row-ish sort of, you know, atmosphere. So I figured, why not go ahead and test this out? Because there shouldn't be fear in what we do. This was actually a commission that I painted for a collector of mine, and it's Don Tacha Tacos. If you guys are familiar, it's a taco shop on, I believe, Abbey and White, fantastic tacos. But I think that it's really important to be honest with ourselves, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. This painting caused a mental breakdown. I had a freak out, you guys, and it was one of those things where, as artists, a lot of times it's like we want to make our next move our best move, right? And it's every painting has to be better than the last. But realistically, that's like this self-imposed standard that no one around us that loves us is adhering to. People just want us to be healthy and happy and create. So the less stress we can inflict on ourselves, the better it'll be. And then, you know, maybe we'll get these paintings done with a little less gray hairs on the back end. But I do think, you guys, it's important to care enough that you do, you know, have some sort of emotional attachment. And, you know, whether or not you get stressed, you might not be that sort of human, but having that excitement because anxiety and excitement are opposite sides of the same coin. So it's just enjoying your own work and understanding that the path that you walk is unique to you. So you guys can all paint the same place, but the way that you unpack it will be completely different based on your preferences in things like temperature, hue, value, and chroma, or just your life experiences, So I think that's important to be okay with that and be okay that we have our own voice. It's a lot of graffiti stuff in here. You guys, a lot of train cars and stuff like that. And this is like the beginning arc of the presentation. A lot of these paintings are newer, like this is 2025. And when you like come into this art thing in a non-linear fashion, and you don't have access to like the philosophical outlook that the Italian Renaissance and the Impressionists would rock with, and you don't have access to a lot of the things that would get you in a starting point where you're like on equal ground. A lot of times it's hard to be comfortable being vulnerable, right? Because as guys, we have to be strong, we have to be powerful, and being vulnerable, especially in art, is extremely hard. And I think for myself, I can be completely transparent and say graffiti, in the 2 decades I was doing it, it was a criminal act and there was a stigma attached to it. So the paintings that I created throughout my career that reference graffiti have kind of been like secret, like things that don't really divulge the identity of Batman, so to speak, because at some point the stigma kind of disappeared, but my conditioning has been conditioned, right? And if you live for 20 years and you think something's bad, when it becomes accepted, it's hard for you to flip your brain and say, oh, okay, no, this is like an Applebee's sort of version of artwork now, and this is the stuff that people want. So I say that to you guys, hoping that you will not put your true self to the side, and you'll be honest with yourself and honest with, the world, and paint what's in your heart. So this is a drawing. Some of you guys may know of this, some of you guys may not. This is a course by Charles Barg. He made a extensive drawing course for Jerome's art school, and essentially it's these really, really tedious drawings, and it teaches you like sight sizing and how to block in the drawing. So you just start off and you basically just sight size it, and you do your shadow shapes and you block it in. And the whole goal is to teach like transition. So a friend of mine had put me onto this whole course and gave me a few copies of the drawings, and I just took it upon myself to just really investigate this. And the hand holding the sandstone is by far my favorite drawing. Fun fact, I was super broke, and at Art Hop I sold this thing just to get by. So you guys, sometimes you have to hold on to the good ones and just not eat for the night, because I'm kicking myself. Okay, so this guy Nipsey Hussle is a musician, a poet, a rapper. We lost him a few years ago, and what was interesting about this particular painting, I went to LA to go to a live podcast, because I'm really big on podcasts, right? And on the way back, newsflash, Nipsey Hussle was murdered. And it struck me, because I was really listening to a lot of his music at the time, and it was motivational. Anybody who knows Nipsey Hussle knows really motivational music. Start a business, pay your taxes, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to paint this portrait, but my thing was not painting the same portrait that every other artist is painting, because we live in a time where there's a lot of artists, you guys, and people who are, in the limelight have a lot of people who love them. So I took a step back, did some research for 2 weeks, and I found a photo of him at the Laker game. And I said, hold on, LA at the Laker game, like this is all me. So I chose to just isolate him. I felt like the fans and stuff like that wasn't as important, and it was just really my goal to capture the spirit and some sort of emotion through this painting, right? So I grew up on Nightmare on Elm Street, horror movies and stuff like that. And you guys, there are things that you guys love, and really dig into this stuff. Like, if you haven't already in your sketchbook, take a page and just write down cool things that you like, and you'll just get back to it whenever you're ready. This particular image was from Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it was like part 5. And the funny part about this, and it always stuck with me, because Freddy Krueger is in someone's family photo, and he takes the kid out, and he's like in the family photo as the kid. And I thought it was really hilarious just to paint that. And Freddy being the man of, your dreams or your nightmares, he's coming when you're sleeping. And I think that painting things like this in between serious projects is really a breath of fresh air for me. It gives me a chance to experiment with different colors, different techniques, and just kind of have some fun. And sometimes, we get a few successful paintings in the ringer. Printmaking. So experimentation, you guys, is important. And failure happens through experimentation. But this run of prints I did for the Art and BS podcast, and it has a bunch of different hidden icons in there, spray cans, coffee cups, and all of that good stuff. But as an artist, it's important to not put ourselves in a box. And you're not limited to drawing. You're not limited to painting. You're limited to your imagination and your creativity. So sometimes you might get tired of your standard method of creativity. If you're just only used to using watercolor, then take a break and do some sculpture. And then that other artistic activity will inform your primary practice. And I think that as artists, sometimes we have so much riding on success, we forget to just relax and enjoy the skills and the talents that God gave us, and to just work through and see what happens. So engage in other mediums, you guys, and other forms of art, because you never know what you like until you try it. So yeah, and printmaking is really fun. I try to do one once a year. So on my podcast, the first question I ask everybody is, what was your first memory seeing art? So this guy, does anybody know who painted this? You can say it if you know it. Norman Rockwell, right? So it's a Norman Rockwell ad for Coca-Cola. Norman Rockwell was a very prolific illustrator, and he did a lot of the covers for the Saturday Evening Post. So you guys probably have seen like the Boy Scouts and stuff like that. And back in that time, he and J.C. Leyendecker, another prolific illustrator, kind of had a little feud going, because J.C. Leyendecker had all of the holiday covers for the Saturday Evening Post, which left Norman Rockwell to seek commissions elsewhere to kind of stay afloat. He had a lot of covers, but the holidays, if you guys noticed, they were all dedicated to J.C. Leyendecker. So the first memory seeing art, this thing really stuck out to me. But when I think about it, you guys, it's not something that in real time as a kid I cared about, right? So there were these other things. Going with my dad to one of his friends' houses, Budweiser in the 90s had put out the Kings of Africa posters. And I remember seeing these things, and I was like, wait, what's going on here? What is this, right? And there were these epic posters that had, I think there were like 9 different Kings of Africa, and they were informative, inspirational, and I could see myself in these paintings. But I was a kid, and as inspired as I should have been, I wasn't, you guys. I was focused on being a kid, right? So things like this were around my parents' home. Marvin Gaye's album cover, I Want You. Now, Ernie Barnes is a famous artist who was actually an NFL player, retired, and then started painting, right? So this particular elongated style of the human figure really stuck out to me. And now it stands out for a totally different reason, but a lot of people know this artwork and they don't know the artist. And I got to a point where I started to research all of the stuff that I thought was cool as a kid, and I was like, oh, wow, this guy did, oh, wow. And then when you start doing the time machine research, you figure out like, these people are a lot more interesting than the things they produce. And that's just like all of us. Artists are always more interesting than the things we produce. And the more you guys have fun and talk to artists and expand your community, the more you'll be like, okay, yeah, we're kind of lit. So album artwork was something that really stuck out to me. The Far Side album, Bizarre Ride to the Far Side, and I actually had this on cassette tape, so it was really hard to appreciate album artwork, like on that particular scale. But there was an album that came out, and this was something that really made me think about art. Not do it, but made me think about it. So, Dennis Cohen did the cover for the Jesus album, Liquid Swords. This was one of the Wu-Tang Clan's solo projects, and I'm gonna tell you guys, in a certain era, like you couldn't AI the artwork. You couldn't do any of that stuff. So like going to a physical record store, and I know I'm dating myself, oh my God. So like, but like going and looking and seeing art on your music, it definitely, you know, it's kind of like a blue bubble versus a green bubble. You got kind of prejudice when you saw like bad stuff. You're like, okay, I'm gonna lean towards these good artistic covers, and what you would find is legendary albums that have paved the way and inspired millions of people. So at this point in time, you guys, I'm just a young kid, just getting into art via cartoons, comic books, album covers, Street Fighter, right? This was a thing that really caught my attention, and this was what kept me from drawing, you guys. Stay away from video games. It will keep you from drawing, I'm telling you, right? So I should have been drawing, right? I should have been drawing those album covers, but what was I doing? I was over on Blackstone and Fresno Street at H&H Liquor playing Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I was at 7-Eleven on Ashland and Blackstone playing Samurai Showdown. They had a round table pizza too, and they had a lot of fighting games there. But the thing is, you guys, is the child I was made me the man I am today, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So then we start to get a little bit older, and anime hits my radar. So Battle Angel, Alita, Ninja Scroll, and the iconic Akira. And seeing these movies, it was like, wait, hold on. I know like American cartoons, and this is like really mature, really adult. And this was the coming of age sort of period for James. And what I started to find was, being in Fresno, California, we didn't have too much fine art, but you know we had a ton of was graffiti. So at one point, I ran across 2 VHS tapes, Beat Street, which was made in the 80s, and it's essentially it's like a love story with like the 4 archetypes. You know, one guy's the rapper, one guy's the DJ, one guy's the little brother's the b-boy, and then you have like the graffiti guy, Ramo. So this really was important because I got a chance to see people who look like me making art, and I hadn't seen that before. So I'm like, wait, hold on. These guys are doing what? And California, you know, we had break-in, which was not nearly as cool as this. They had like tight leather shirts on and break-in, and it just wasn't as gritty as Beat Street. So now this movie prepared me for, not really, but it prepared me in the aspect of graffiti is something that you do and you create, and there's a very high risk and there's a very low reward. The only reward that you get is a congratulations from your friends, you know, and maybe a warrant if you're doing it right. So in this movie, and this is like a complete work of fiction, you guys, like it's bad, but it's worth watching. So in this movie, Ramo is the graffiti guy, and the antagonist is a graffiti writer who writes the word spit. And Spit likes to go behind Ramo and write his name in cursive over all of Ramo's stuff. And spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. So I'm a kid, and I'm like, wow, like someone would go behind someone's work and just write over their stuff. Like, who would do that, right? So then this movie comes across my desk, which is Style Wars. Now, Style Wars is a documentary. Style Wars is the real version of Beat Street, okay? So in this movie, there are people of color, black people, Asian people, Puerto Ricans, white people, and it's a documentary. So you see Scheme with his mom, you see, Dondi in the train yards, and these intimate interviews. As a teenager, you feel like, oh, wow, okay, this art form I can see myself in, and this isn't like this dramatized version. These guys are in it. These guys are talking about rack and paint. These guys are talking about running from the cops. These guys are talking about all of this real stuff. So, of course, I was really inspired by the New York subway graffiti movement. Now, this guy, Cap, is who Spit was based on. Cap is a real life graffiti writer, and if you watch Style Wars, he goes around and does these bubble letters over all of these guys' nice pieces. And what it taught me is two things. Number one, nothing is sacred, right? So if you're gonna do something, like, if you're gonna make art, make it for the experience, because you don't know how long that's gonna last. A lot of times this stuff is ephemeral, and coming to the fine art side, not having to worry about people painting over your canvases or things like that, there's like a level of like relief, but sometimes, a little bit of stress makes you more active, because if you feel like for every 5 paintings I do, only one is going to survive, you're probably going to paint 25, right? So like a few of them survive. So I feel like in graffiti, those were some of the things that I was picking up on. And this was, this movie, and at this time, I'm just a kid, you guys. I'm walking around with markers and trying to figure stuff out and not really doing anything crazy, but through time, through effort, through hard work, we get into it. And I asked myself, like, what is graffiti? And there's a book called The Art of Getting Over, and it's a really great read. And "You're a toy until further notice" is one of the quotes. And essentially what a toy is like a beginner, someone who doesn't really understand the rules and the practices and is just violating just all across the spectrum, right? So the thing that I appreciate about this line of thinking is it forces you to evolve. It doesn't allow for participation trophies. It forces you to get your feet wet, your hands dirty, and put in some work in order to receive that reward, which is respect, it's really, really weird. But I feel like on the opposite end, when there is no cash prize, sometimes that's really cool. But let's go over some of the things that I learned in graffiti, right? So contrast and value is something that's really important, and there are 7 different types of contrast, and we could go over that. I could point you in the direction of a fantastic color theory instructor, but I'll save that for later. The thing about graffiti is, you guys, we procure spray paint, and you only have so much you can use. So at some point, you get low and you have to figure out how to make things work. You got a lot of red, you have a little white, you have a little black, it's all the leftovers. So at that point, you're swapping your colors and creating some form of contrast based on whatever salad of spray paint you have. So I think that that's really something that I carry with me, is how do I kind of make this work even if I run out of said material. Skill and teamwork. So this is a whole car that was painted in Seattle, Washington, with a friend of mine. And the thing about doing things illegally is you have to, be on your toes. You have to have the eyes of the eagle. You have to have the ears of a wolf. And it requires some sort of teamwork. So there's this tandem of getting this task completed safely, securely, and exiting all without things, having a hitch. And sometimes things have hitches, but I think like with artists, a lot of times we all, outside of, academia, we have our workspaces, we're isolated, we're in our comfort zones. And sometimes that's not really a good thing. Sometimes you have to get around, your peers. Sometimes you have to get around your colleagues and work together, because many hands make for light work. And if you have a goal and you have 3 colleagues that have a goal, if you guys put your mind together, you can totally obtain that, which is the essence of the graffiti crew. It's just a group of people all working to obtain fame for and from an organization. So problem solving. A lot of times and those who skateboard can kind of, relate to this. Seeing something and this thing not being obtainable, and it's the how. The how am I gonna get it? Not anything else, but we're gonna make this happen. And I feel like in art, it's really important for us to have goals and to not get sidetracked by the size of these goals. You can do whatever you want. If you want a museum show, if you want a solo show, if you want to travel, you can do all of these things, but you have to think, how am I gonna make this happen? And there might be some compromises that you have to make, but the goal is the goal, and getting there and getting back safely, I think those compromises, we kind of, we're okay with those, right? So the thing is, you guys, is after you do something for a long time, it starts to make sense. And you start to really experiment and have fun and use different materials. And for a lot of graffiti, my take was 50% cheap paint, 50% good paint, right? Which is not really a great recipe. I should have used all good paint, but for the sake of volume, right, we're using some cheap paint. And this is just like any sort of art craft. So whatever you guys want to do, if it's, you dream of being the next Akira Toriyama, you have to dial in that anatomy and learn, like the difference between the sternal notch and the, oh man, and you're humorous, like you have to really study and be a student of this stuff and be okay with refining your craft, but also understand that if you love it, you're gonna plunge into it. And one thing that I did enjoy about graffiti was the opportunity of doing like these big pieces on a train or a wall, and then they just move, and you could get fancy and use the numbers on the train and track them and say, oh, this train is, in Delaware or whatever. And it's sort of akin to the art market. You buy a painting from someone and it's in your home and they call and check on it, and if you get broke, you sell it, and then you tell them. I'm joking. So moving forward, experimentation, you guys, and we talked about that with block printing, but I can't stress this enough, because when you have an art form like graffiti that's centrally based around typography, there is a huge field to work with, right? So in that particular vein, it would behoove the artist to study fonts, to study signage, and things of that nature, because it just informs all of our artistic practices. So my goal in doing this, you guys, is to show you how all of these things kind of come together in a really unconventional way, because as artists, we're just a hot mess, and we have to be okay with that. So it's really important just to stay at it, not lose focus, and remember, you are who you are wherever you are. And if they take you right now and they drop you off in New York, you're gonna be the same person. If they take you, they drop you off in Dubai, you're gonna be the same person. And I say that, and just let's be clear, when I say it, I mean, if you're a hustler, you're gonna be a hustler. If you're not a hustler, you're not gonna be a hustler. So it's important to think, like, what are the things that I wanna do? Who am I working myself to be? What is the ultimate version of me? So when I am in these uncomfortable situations, I can get on autopilot and operate quickly, effectively, and not, miss a step. So I think that that's one thing about graffiti that's kind of cool, is going to different regions and still operating, even though you have no clue where you're at or what's going on, there's still certain, as long as you stick to the parameters, you're operating and you're continuing your practice. So, you guys, I spent a long time doing graffiti before I really started to get into this art thing. And I wanted to go through that just so we could get some work. Oh wow, we got like 20 minutes left. So okay, we're gonna skip through this real fast because I took a lot of your time. Okay, so This was the first art show that I ever went to, and the reason that was important to me and the reason I'm sharing this with you guys is because it was the first time I ever seen a black person have an art show. And it was actually a graffiti writer who was a mutual friend, who was a friend that I got introduced to, and we're still friends to this day. So Seattle Legends was in Seattle, Washington, and it was by Mike Wagner. And in the show, he had a painting of Bruce Lee, a painting of Jimi Hendrix, one of Paris Hilton, and there's one of Kurt Cobain, which I can't find on the internet. And you guys, I say that to say, have all of your work on a hard drive, because as the internet expands, these websites go down and then your files are lost. And I mean, like, my friend is quadriplegic now, so he doesn't have access to any of his art. So I called him, I said, hey, Mike, I'm gonna give you a shout out on this, like, for my talk, because we have a lot, like, there's a lot of influence. And he said, hey, bro, I don't have any files, and send me all of the stuff you have. So I started digging in the crates and found a bunch of stuff based on Mike. And I think that I really want to share this to you guys, because you can see meeting this guy, like, oh, wait, James was into graffiti. James was into video games. So I was like, were we separated at birth? This is, I mean, you have a fly rugby on in the picture. Like, everything is on point. Like, man, we're kindred spirits. So I tried to ask some art questions, and I never really got answers. But Mike was always doing stuff. He was in the Seattle Art Fair. He had articles written about him in the Seattle Times, and it was really inspiring to see a friend, like, really just go through and blow this thing out of the water. And I think that that's why I'm so passionate about, this art thing. So at some point I was like, okay, I should try this painting stuff. And this was actually one of my first paintings, you guys. It was an acrylic and spray paint painting. Now, this was like super old school. It was like on a screen printing screen. I took some drop cloth, painted it real fast. It's on YouTube. And it was just a way to get my feet wet. I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do in art or where I wanted to go. So I just started off painting vintage video game stuff, because that's kind of the lowest hanging fruit for me, right? So at some point I was like, I need to get serious. So I went to LA, and Sean Barber and Carl Dobsky had the Safe House Atelier, and they would host a la prima painting workshops there. And that's a young James getting schooled by Sean Barber, because I'm trying to figure out this art thing, and books are cool, YouTube's cool, but I needed some actual instruction. And this experience put some rocket fuel in me. So at some point, my paintings started to change. So I would just take my own references. I would have family members post for me when they came into town. I would paint things based on hip hop artists that I love, and just attempt to grab the lowest hanging fruit and make paintings based on them, right? So through that, I would get some charcoal busts and did a few drawings and things like that, just to try to see, like, okay, how far can you take this art thing? Because I have no clue what I'm capable of until I do it. And it's the same for all of us, So we have to try, we have to push ourselves, and then we get impressed and we make these artistic breakthroughs. So I started wondering, so in this art game, like, I seen Style Wars, I seen Mike Wagner, but, like, who looks like me in these paintings? So I started to do some research, right? And this is a painting by Jerome, and this was one that really stood out to me. And I started to see, like, this common thread, right? So we get a bunch of these paintings that, when I'm looking into how do I do this fine art, what are some of the classical paintings, I get, pictures of black people in positions of servitude, typically, right? So, and I think this was really interesting. This painting is really interesting because William Jones is a still life painter. So this painting essentially isn't really about the boy. It's about the still life that he's holding, and it's about him being a prop along with the still life. And in seeing these sort of things, it's jarring, but it's also, it's real, it's history. So I'm like, okay, this is what I'm walking into. This is this fine art space. This is, and not entirely, but this is part of the tiles on the floor laid, and people have built large movements on a lot of these, these approaches to painting. John Singer Sargent, man, one of my favorite painters, but he didn't paint black people, right? So I'm looking, and J.C. Leyendecker, right? I love his paintings, but it's like, this is how these guys are, this is how they're portraying people of color. Now, there's this double-edged sword of like, this is a commission and that is the time, but I also really find it hard to believe that all of the paintings that are commissions, if they have one particular lens, that artists can't do paintings that counter that point of view in their personal work. So that, as much as I love J.C. Leyendecker's work, it's sort of jarring and problematic on a few different levels. But Norman Rockwell, this guy, we're back to it. Back to the Santa Claus guy, right? So this particular painting really inspired me. And at this point in my career, you guys, I'm doing research, right? I'm like, okay, who are the painters? Who are some of the guys that I should be looking out for? So this painting comes across my desk, and I'm like, I wanted to do something like that, right? So I started a Homer Simpson version of the Norman Rockwell, right? Because it's like, I love Norman Rockwell. I love The Simpsons. It's low-hanging fruit. Let's put them together. And I think that as an artist, it's really important, you guys, to have fun. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't watch The Simpsons for like 20 years since I was a kid, so I had to go and I had to watch all of the episodes that had paintings in them. So I was able to put like the paintings, as references on the side, and those are all references from like Mr. Burns' Vault and the Haunted House of Horrors episodes and things like that. And Justin McAleese is a huge lover of The Simpsons. So, sometimes we get commissions and people ask us to paint things, and I think it's really, it's important to experiment and see how far we can push these things. This particular painting was a top that a photographer had shot, and he wanted me to paint it. And I hadn't seen the movie Inception at the time, but later on I saw it and I was like, was that what that's from? And if so, I'm totally okay with this. So, after a long, complicated friendship breakup, Mike and I started being cool again and talking on the phone and playing Street Fighter V. And we would talk on the phone about art. So the Homer Rockwell triple portrait, I was on the phone with Mike, and I was like, how do I research, bro? And he was like, this is how I research in my artistic practice. And at this point in time, I put in so much work, the respect was there, so I started getting the answers, right? So every Sunday, you guys, we would play Street Fighter, and I would smoke his boots. But he would give me, like, art game, because Mike was, selling paintings for $8,000, $10,000, and he's, successful in art. So I was like, hold on, we're doing this. This is kind of like a talk show. This is kind of like a thing. Like, we should start a podcast, bro. And Mike said, no, we shouldn't. And he said, James, I'm doing this, but you're going to take it and you're going to do whatever you're going to do with it. We're just doing this to see, if it works. So we recorded a pilot. And at this point in time, and this is how uneducated I was, you guys, Cerulean with a K, because on the episode I called it Carillion. And Mike is like, Carillion? And he's like, Cerulean with a K, so that it was like, there are always jokes in the title, and it was just, him busting my chops, but this was proof of concept, and we had fun, people seemed to like it, and I said, okay, I'll start just inviting my friends on, and through these episodes, I started learning things. Local artist James Martin, who is from the Choctaw tribe, told me on this particular episode that in World War II, the Choctaw Natigua sent soldiers to Germany to talk in their native language because the Germans couldn't break the codes. So they were called code talkers. And I'm like, whoa, this is like so informative. I'm sitting down with these artists. I get to look at their cool artwork and they're educating me. This is like free education. So I continued to do it and just invited all of my friends on, you guys. And started reaching back and inviting graffiti guys who I looked up to. And they're, yeah, sure, James, let's go ahead and do an episode. And this episode was really, really monumental for me because these guys have painted the Indianapolis 500. They did the Super Bowl when it was in Indianapolis, like really big muralists in the Midwest. And what's crazy is I record this episode, you guys, and after I'm done, this is in Indianapolis, Indiana. I leave Sense's house. I get on the curb and I call my friend because I'm super excited. So I call my friend. I'm like, yeah, I got the interview. Simultaneously, red lights and blue lights come around the corner. So I'm walking and they swoop up on me and it's like red lights and blue lights. So they hop out. So the police hop out and I'm on my phone and they like have their guns. So Sense, who I just got done interviewing, is like in his driveway, like in his garage, which is literally where the door is at. And he runs, he books it. And this guy is so overweight, bless his heart. But on the true motive of being an ally, diffused the situation between me and the Indianapolis Police Department where I was being, who knows what would have happened. It really looked like it was going to get bad real fast. And I share this story because the value in community, you guys, and it's really important to understand, like, the person you look up to today may be the person who saves your life tomorrow. So just roll with it and stay focused. So this episode was really important because I got to interview my first ever director of a museum. Shout out to Susan Obert, who's, I believe, a Fresno State alumni. She shouted this establishment out on the episode. And this is one of my favorite paintings, the Nymphium. It's in the Hagen Museum, which is located in Stockton, California. If you guys have any free time, they have the largest collection of 19th and 20th century art in there. It's a life-changing experience. I would definitely encourage you to go. So at this point in the podcast, I'm like, okay, wow, we're getting like professionals. It's not just my friends. It's like, we're like, this is bucket list type stuff. So how far can we push this, right? So then I started reaching out to like my favorite graffiti writers, the guys I looked up to as a kid. And I send them an episode. Hey, you have to send a little bit of the work so they can test it, and a nice personalized message. And I started getting a lot of yeses, a lot of success. And the thing I found out about these guys is the artists who we look up to are the most humble artists ever. Like, they always think that they're just regular. And I'm like, wow, like, we put you guys up on a pedestal, but you guys are just regular and don't call me any kind of crazy, names or anything like that. I'm not a legend. I'm not a king. I'm just an artist. And those are some of the things that I'm learning. So it's just being more comfortable. This is probably one of the most involved episodes, and I got a chance to interview the legendary DJ Qbert. For those who don't know, DJ Qbert is a world champion turntablist. He won DMC, which is like an international turntable competition, 2 times world champion, and I believe they won the US championship once, to the point where they banned him from competing. He's that good. They said, okay, you're just a judge. So this particular interview was great because I got a chance to do an episode that was really, I thought, out of reach, but doing the research and putting together like a long list of questions and having a concise game plan, I gained someone who is a friend now, and I think that that's really important, you guys. Qbert is he's probably your favorite DJ's favorite DJ, and extremely prolific. And you can see him there with his turntable. That's how you know you're good, when you're a DJ and you get your own turntable, like how basketball players get shoes. So moving forward, I started to look and wonder, like, who are the black painters? Okay, I'm looking at these guys, they're painting black people, and this is the only dude who I ever heard of because he had a movie, and then I looked and he does this abstract work, but is there anybody else? Like, okay, and yes. So 1800s, we have Robert S. Duncanson. This guy is from Canada. The Hudson River School kind of, they claim him, but he never went there. He's like second generation Hudson River School. But I found these paintings, and they're magnificent landscapes, and they're actually small. 11 by 19 inches is pretty small, and the Scottish landscape that's kind of healthy. But it really was heartwarming to see someone who looked like me painting landscapes. So in doing this research, I found one of my favorite painters at this point, Henry Ossawa Tanner. And this guy was just cooking, right? I mean, I feel like in these paintings I feel warm, I feel at home, and it doesn't feel like there's like this objectification or a gaze that's happening. And I think it's really important to do our research and find the art that we resonate with, that we see ourselves in, because when we do that, then we're able to really get excited about this thing and we want to make more work. Kerry James Marshall, contemporary artist. I haven't had him on the podcast, so if you know him, tell him I'm trying to get him on. But he's actually set records for auctioning off art at Sotheby's, right? And you'll see a lot of people who have paintings that look like this, and the influence is clear, but that's how you know as an artist you're doing it right. And there's Kerry James Marshall with his portrait of Harriet Tubman, which was auctioned off at Sotheby's. I think it was important for me to kind of reach back and like do research and do portraits also. This was one of Malcolm X, who was my birthday twin, I'm sorry, guys, I'm looking at the clock, I got 4 minutes. So paying the bills with art is always kind of tricky. I do a ton of pet portraits because people love their kids. And this was a really fun one, and I think there's a delicate balance, you guys, because there are the things that we want that are going to push our heart forward, and there's also paying the bills and keeping the lights on. So as artists, it's really important that we find a balance, and that way we don't melt down. So there was a point in time where I was really wanting to paint sunsets, because I was like, okay, how do sunsets work? Most of these paintings that I painted are in the daytime, so I went out and started taking pictures of downtown sunsets and just painting a bunch of them and just doing them as studies, and people liked them, and they ended up moving. This was a painting you guys have saw. It's a Fresno Donut House, super iconic. This is High Top Coffee, or Alchemist Coffee now, but this was when it was High Top Coffee, and the owners don't listen, regardless of scandal, their all money was good money. They commissioned me for a painting, and with this one, this painting was about like 30 inches by like 18. It was kind of larger than I normally paint. I just wanted to paint something that impressed myself, because at this point I felt like I'd reached the ceiling, and I said, okay, well, what's the next step? And the next step is like painting the whole environment, like the painters that I love seem to do. So I think it's really important to practice drawing also, you guys. This was a self-portrait, and I literally did this one from 12 midnight to 3 in the morning. Like, it was really late hours, and sometimes that's when I work best, but make sure you set aside some sort of time to work whenever it works for you. And as you guys can see, a lot of these objects they're things that we see a lot, the cup of noodles. I was really happy with how I painted the spoon on that one. One of the greatest basketball players of all time. And this was gouache on paper. I recently started to use gouache. Shout outs to Kevin Stewart McGee for putting me on game. And I think it's one of those things, you guys, where I was using oil for a long time, and I hadn't gotten into watercolor, but I wanted a way to make a painting that didn't take 45 minutes to set up. And gouache is a great way to get there and get started and get moving. So this is a particular segment of a painting that I had painted that was part of the Exquisite Corpse show. We had William Raines, Joy Crotty on this one. So essentially what they did was they gave us all a panel, and it was taped off. No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the clock, so I'm freaking out, you guys. I'll chill. So, okay, cool. All right, we got time. Yeah, appreciate you. So the Exquisite Corpse is essentially a game that the Surrealists came up during that particular art movement. They're Surrealists, Impressionists, somewhere around there. And essentially, you take a piece of paper, you fold it, one person draws one thing, another person draws another thing, and then the subsequent artists, you guys all rock out, boom, you unfold it, and then you have 3 pieces of art that you didn't know went together. So with this one, we just painted it and put butcher paper over our section. I believe I got the painting last. William Raines is in the middle. And he does, workshops at, isn't Raines at like Cal Arts?
He was, yeah.
Okay. And he's teaching at Fresno City and somewhere else right now. Okay. Yep. Shout out to William Raines. And this was one that worked like really, really well. And I was surprised because when I got it, all I could see was this strip of brown like this. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with that? So I took one of my plants and painted it, and somehow it worked out well. So operating on blind faith, you guys, is something as an artist we just have to do. You have to trust the process, as corny as it sounds. So this is a more recent still life painting, a coffee maker. Shout outs to Rehop for sponsoring me with this great model and prop. It was a vintage coffee maker, and sometimes, you guys, I see things and I'm like, I have to paint that. Like, ooh, like I could just hug you. And this coffee maker was one of those things. This particular painting was for my solo show that I had this past September, and I just wanted to paint something that, was just kind of like an icon or some sort of propaganda or something like that, so I felt like the fist with the brush was, James and his attempt at, power through art and, peaceful resistance, right? So assault and batterina. So this painting, you guys, was one of the paintings that I made for my solo show, and I did a small gouache study, and it was the most fun I've had making a painting in I don't know how long. A ballerina with an angle monitor. Come on now, right? So I think that the experience that I had with that really informed me like moving forward in 2025. And by that I mean not doing paintings that I don't care about or I'm not interested in. And you guys will find that sometimes you get to a point in a painting where you're just like, I'm not interested anymore. And this is time to cut bait. But when you're interested the whole way through, you're excited, you're laughing, those are the ones that you want to stick with and see how far you can push them. This particular painting was actually from a photo from a local ceramicist who made the masks, Shirley, her name is Shirley Jackson. So she took a photo, and I saw the photo, and I was like, oh, I got to paint that. And the thing about it is there are a lot of women in my family who've overcome, health issues, domestic violence, like all types of things under the sun. So for those who've seen the movie Princess Mononoke, you guys know there's a heroine, and she's there to save the forest, and she's not here for games or anything like that. So I painted this Ebony Queen Mononoke because Shirley Jackson is, I believe, Black and Korean. So there's this aspect of the strength of the Black woman who've raised me and been in my life, and I wanted to really just pay homage to them through this painting. So yeah, there we go. I think that's about it. And yeah, do we have questions? I was, yeah. The Vatican Custom Framery, they actually relocated to Norfolk. But yeah, I was building them. We were fabricating like all of the wood, like milling it. So yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Adrian. Yeah, great question. So it's like, for me, the recipe is like meeting in the middle. So if there's like this pop culture aspect, I like to go all the way left and get like a fine art aspect. And like, okay, so we have like the Homer Simpson, Norman Rockwell. I also did like a Rick and Morty, but it's like the dogs playing poker. And there's like the fake Morty underneath the table, like, and he's, like the real Morty, and then like fake Morty is there, and you don't know which one is which. So it's always going from one end to the polar opposite and marrying the two. Is weird and hard as that sound, but like once I go to like this end, it's the options sort of like slim down, because I'm like, okay, what fits with this peg? So yeah, we are taking things further, so stay tuned. Is that it? I think okay, we got you. Sorry, okay.
Do you have like, out of all the paintings you've done so far in portraits, do you have like a favorite one that like sticks out as like this represents me?
That one's not done yet. That's the one I'm working on right now. No, I'm serious. Like, it's like if you see it, you're like, oh, okay, James, I get what you're saying. It's like a really big like one, but You know, the thing is like all of them are. Like, they're all me. We're complicated, right? Like, you know, sometimes it's like you get a nice payday, you buy a bottle of Hennessy, and you paint that Hennessy in the igloo cooler. That's you, you know? And sometimes you get in a car accident and you paint like the meds that you have because you're broke and you're like, okay, well, this is all I got. Like, all of these things, you guys, they are me. And we are complicated, so it's really difficult to just like whittle it down to one particular moment, you know? It's wherever you listen to podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. So it's called the Art and BS Podcast. Yep, we've had Adam Langati was on. He's an instructor here. That was a pretty good interview.
Nick Potter too, right?
Yeah, Nick Potter was on. Yeah. Yep, Nancy. Yeah. We had a pretty good crop of artists. So yeah, a bunch of it's star-studded, you guys. But you know, we typically do fine artists and graffiti writers, so there's like a healthy balance. Any other questions? The light's in my eyes, so I can't see it. Crystal. All right.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing, like, your journey. I know you, but, like, I learned more about you today. And I just wanted to know, like, do you have any special, like, projects or, like, a show in the works that you'd like to share about?
So I'm currently applying for some Measure P funding. And you know, I had a solo show in September, so really now at this point, you guys, we're starting from scratch. We're working on a new body of work. I'm, you know, reaching out to a few larger institutions without spoiling anything to try to get my name in some bright lights. So yeah, but currently I'm working with the Artist Mentorship Program ran by Ruth Soderlin. If you're interested in being a mentee, hit them up on Instagram. So I'll be mentoring young artists. But yeah, outside of that, really it's just painting and experimenting and working on this new body of work, honestly.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you all for being here today, and to learn a lot more about James Durrell today. I'm so happy you were able to make it out and to speak to our Fresno State community and everyone else. So I really appreciate that. So thank you so
Cool.
much for being
Thanks
here.
for having me. Okay, cool. Unplug this thing now. Can I unplug this? Is that fine?